Welcome to the Job Fair, where we give job seekers and employers the space to tell their own stories and bring our listeners along for the ride. We're your hosts, Doug and Shauna. Let's dive into it.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Job Fair podcast, episode 3, season 2. How you doing over there, Doug?
I'm doing great. Great to be back on set. How are you, my West Coast comrade?
I'm doing good. Our fall weather is coming in. How's it over there in New York?
Hoodie season is in full effect. I got my Job Fair swag on.
Shout out.
Listeners, by the way, I know we're a young, emerging startup pod, but if you want to see merch from us, we got hats, we got hoodies. Let us know if we should release them. Shauna is the one that's been architecting this so far, but we can go full steam if y'all want. Let us know.
They're comfy. They're comfy
yes,
as hell.
Very, very comfy indeed. Yes. So it's exciting to be back on the set. Never gets old with you, Shauna. For today's topic, we got a real juicy one that I know relates with a lot of folks these days, especially. All right, we're going to talk today about the ins and outs of disclosing side hustles to your potential employer. For those of us in the market, that can be dicey at times, but we're going to dig all into that today.
That's a great topic. Before, though, what do we have? As always, agree to disagree.
Hey. All right. Kick us off. Work is a safe space to discuss politics.
No. Safe space, it should be a safe space. It's not a safe space, but I also would not talk about politics at work. Wouldn't bring that in. I mean, close friends, close coworkers, absolutely. But you just never know where people align. You never know if that's going to come into any sort of judgment when you're working with folks. Safe space, it should be, but it's not. So I'm going to disagree here. Greatly disagree. Strongly disagree.
Well, yeah, Shauna, that's really interesting because I could have sworn that you talked about politics with me when we were together. Yeah. Well, maybe I'm wrong.
Okay, maybe, but that's a safe space knowing that we were probably highly aligned, I would say, in that conversation. But the question was, is the workplace a safe space?
Let me help you grab your foot out of your mouth. Okay, it's all right, though. Anyways, my stance on this is I strongly disagree. Strongly. Like 10x disagree that work is a safe space to discuss politics. You never know who's lurking, and people are sensitive these days. I haven't really seen anybody get canceled over political alignment, but we're in the heyday of cancel culture, so strongly disagree. Back to you, Shauna.
Yeah. Well, we agree on the strongly disagree, so that's a win. All right, moving on. So this one, I came up with this one because for me, it's come up a lot in my personal life, but texting is always the choice over talking on the phone.
I disagree. I think that
you like to hear that voice.
I like to hear that voice. I can be a little sarcastic and just weird and roguish on text, and it misses people. So I much prefer a voice note or a phone call over text personally, even though it's not always the most convenient. So yeah, I disagree.
Well, that's interesting, Doug, because outside of recording these, we don't talk on the phone. We only text. And that's probably because I agree with this statement. I'm a texter. If you want me on the phone, we'll probably have to calendar it. We probably have to schedule it. I'm not a phone person anymore. I used to be. I'm not anymore. So definitely agree with this one.
Talking on the phone is like nostalgia at this point for a lot of people. And I embrace nostalgia. So anywho.
Do not start calling me after this. Text, voice message is fine.
Cool. Seasonal depression is a real thing.
I agree with this one. I live in California, so I think this is where you're located specific, because I hear in Alaska this is a real thing. But I guess I agree with it. I've never gone through it, but if I don't get sunlight in a day, I'm pretty not happy.
Interesting. Well, yeah, definitely different perspective coming from Cali. Here in New York and on the East Coast, yes, we definitely get all 4 seasons, or we have been up to these last few years of crazy climate change. But I disagree. I think that the temperature drops and we have daylight savings time, so it gets darker earlier, and people just don't want to be out naturally when it's colder and darker. I don't think it's a depression per se. I think it's just like a comfort thing. Like even in the summertime, if you get like a chilly night, people aren't going to be outside as much as they would be if it was really nice.
Yeah, but I think that gloom doom does play a part over sunshine. I'm not a therapist, but bringing up your kind of like spirit. Okay, whatever.
You sound like one now.
I did study it for a bit. Okay. All right. So mine is having a 4-day work week is the future of business. I say is the future, not we hope that it's the future, just to clarify.
Yeah. You heard that deep nasal inhale I just did, right? So you had to clarify it. For me, this is a disagree. I think that a big part of employer or large employer culture at least in the United States has to do with a power dynamic. It's about trading. These employees are trading their time for your money. And I just think that that's giving back too much power to employees at a large scale for it to really catch on mainstream. So I disagree.
Doug, I agree with you. I disagree with this statement. The reason why I clarified is I don't think that having a 4-day work is the future of business, but I would love for it to be the future of business. But that also means that you work longer days on the 4 days. And I just don't know if I have time for things anymore. So I agree with you. I disagree with this to the extent that I do think it's a power thing too. But I mean, we're also saying that with remote back in office. So definitely if it's back in office, 4-day work week probably isn't going to work either. So, yeah.
I see. Agree. Yeah, I'd love to see it happen too, but here we are. All right, y'all. That was a good one. Back to the show.
Back to the show. As Doug mentioned, the topic is side hustles. Let's break that down before we dive into the conversation, Doug. Let's talk about some examples of what we mean by side hustles. In my mind, I'm thinking like, I'm a banker by day, casino dealer at night. I'm a software engineer who gives surfing lessons or painting instructions.
Yeah, kind of, sort of. I've seen even more eccentric pairings of by day, by night. I've seen things like the teacher who's maybe even a stripper at night. I've seen a lot, and it can be cleaner and more family friendly. But yeah, that's what you guys get our gist.
I come with banker by day, casino dealer at night. Doug comes with teacher and stripper at night.
Sorry, so, dancer. Okay.
Gosh. Cool, yeah, but I think we're aligned there for sure. I'm excited about this topic because for me, I have done some side hustles, currently doing them now. I don't know if I necessarily like to call them side hustles, but definitely new kind of journeys and adventures. For me, back in the day when I was working in the entertainment industry, making films, now I feel like with your stripper comment, I have to clarify when I say entertainment. When I was working at a production company, I was doing different things. I was going back to school for some stuff and then also starting an e-commerce business. Now I work at an AI startup, but also doing job fair as well as fractional COO of things. So I get that. And it's something that I'm grateful that I'm able to do and have the time to do.
Yeah. Well, for me, my story, listeners, if you don't know our stories, definitely want to revisit episode 1 and episode of this season and episode 1 of season 1. But anywho, I myself have owned and operated an urban farming business for the past several years on top of my career in program project management and accounting here in New York. So I fit right into this box of someone who's managed a side hustle for an extended period of time. Before that, I dabbled in freelance marketing, which it felt like at times a second career. So yeah, it can range. It can range from a side hustle being an expensive hobby or something that you just committed to, a committed hobby, or it can be you're literally a CEO outside of your day job. There's definitely a spectrum there. I love it. I know a lot of people these days, millennials, Gen Zers, love that, the diversification that comes with it, the added sense of security. There's a lot to unpack as far as why you should or should not disclose it to your employer. And so we want to get
Yeah.
into that.
Yeah, I agree. I also, it's just something that you said that really stood out to me is when you said it could feel like an extra career or an extra day job, because sometimes they do, and then having to juggle, especially if you're not just working on one different thing. So that's definitely one thing to call out. But yeah, let's talk about reasons to disclose and reasons not to disclose. Let's first kick off with, what are you thinking in terms of reasons to disclose? In my mind, it's the value of transparency in building that trust with that company or your boss is what comes to mind for why I would want to disclose. But you, of course, have to build that.
Definitely, definitely. For me, I think the thing that jumps out is legality and just right versus wrong and contents of that company's policy. Be sure to just read and be informed on what's okay and what's not okay. One thing that comes up in this is conflict of interest, the potential for what you're doing outside of your job to be in direct competition or unethical for you to be working for that company. So I would just study a company's policy and make sure you're legally allowed to be doing that.
Yeah, that brings up an interesting question, because what if the side hustle is a conflict of interest, or you're not allowed to work for a side hustle? You sign that in your employment agreement. What do you do? What would you do, Doug?
I'd have to make a hard decision. You know,
I know.
you throw your baby away for the guaranteed meal. I don't know. That's tough. And then it gets into the argument of like, oh, you got to believe in yourself, follow your passion, and you'll make the money later. I don't know. It depends on your situation.
Yeah. I personally have had companies in the employment agreement say that you have to disclose it and determine if it is a conflict of interest. But I've never worked on a side hustle that has been a conflict of interest. I don't think I have disclosed for sure, but I don't think I've ever had one.
Here's the situation where that supports the argument for being open and disclosing. In my case, I currently work in sustainability for my day job while owning this farming business. So they complement each other. My employer knows.
You have to disclose, though. Were you required to disclose?
I don't believe so.
Okay. But you felt an obligation or respect to do so.
I feel like it helped me get the job, to be frank.
Oh, so you disclosed in the interview?
I disclosed in the interview.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I get
I'm not in hot water.
No, but that makes sense. So interview, that's almost like background context to give to your experience. So I could see that. Would you think it helped you get your job? As I say, what would be if it came up now? Would you disclose it now? And I still feel like your answer would be yes if it came up.
Yeah, anyway. My exposure and my wins in the side business can help me in what I'm doing for the company. So still a risk, because that's without looking at the policy and the legalities and things like that. But yeah.
Before we talk about reasons to not disclose, I also feel like keeping up with the white lies is difficult. Man. It's a juggling of what you say, always having to pay attention, unless you're really good at compartmentalizing, which some people are.
Compartmentalizing is a new code word for being a pathological liar.
Okay. Cool. Let's talk about reasons not to disclose or keep it under wraps, where you're willing to do those little white lies. So I would say my fear in my past has been my side hustle being seen as a distraction, even if it's not. Is it always going to come into my boss's mind? She's not working as hard. If I miss a deadline or I take too long to do something, does it question my commitment to my role of my day job?
100% agree with all of this, that those are real possibilities and probably some of the leading reasons why many don't disclose. Now, how that can snowball is that questioning from your boss of your commitment to the job and why did it take you 2 hours to respond to my email? That can then snowball into a stigma on you that may make you less of a viable candidate for a promotion or any kind of growth opportunities at your job, because your employer has this thing in their mind where it's, oh, he or she is spread too thin. So.
And I also feel like this can come up in that conversation with remote work as well, because some people have said because they work remote, they're doing two jobs because they can hold it down.
Are you talking about the people who are working multiple remote full times?
Yeah. I mean, that's straight up side hustling. And that is...
that's beyond side hustle. That's a separate podcast episode in itself. Is people who are doing the multiple...
Future.
Yeah, that's wild. Another reason not to disclose is you can take your ball and go home and not even engage with the risk and the dice game of disclosing, and it is an issue. You can just decide on the front end, hey, I'm not even going to chance it. I'm just going to keep this to myself. So
you could, but in some of the employment agreements, for instance, if you're doing your side hustle on a work laptop that was given to you by your company, that can go as far as claiming ownership over your IP and anything on that computer that's done. And I definitely saw this in some big tech companies that I worked for sure. The IP piece is very tricky, very sticky. And I bet you if it came down to the wire, they would go back and probably look, did you disclose it? Did we approve it? And so then it gets messy.
Okay, you guys heard that out there. If you're going to do work on a computer for your side hustle, make sure it's on a separate laptop. Don't mix and mingle.
Yeah, and I get what people do, because maybe why spend money to get your own personal laptop? It's same thing goes for your phones too. Anything that's work given to you is their property, and that's definitely a flag.
Heard of people in big tech getting issued phones and using them as their own personal phones. That's very strange to me. But I have seen people do that. So.
It's true. I always had the two phones too. Always got made fun of one of my running a side hustle or my drug dealer or something like that. But I always like to keep them separate too. And then if you leave that job, everything that you had on that work technology goes away with it.
Yeah, that's insane. All right. Good talk, Shauna. There's a lot to unpack in making this decision.
I know. And it's really dependent on what's right for that person, and coming at you with our humble non-expert recommendations for how you decide and how you make that call. First, I would say is review your company's policies. And if you need, get legal help.
It could be worth the investment of just having someone that has a legal background review the agreement or the paperwork or your contract or whatever the case may be. I would just personally rank how close the nature of your side hustle is to your job. And I would just use a general rule of thumb in that ranking system is if it's the less related it is to your job directly, the lower the risk. That's just my personal rule of thumb.
I would agree with that. And then also consider that relationship that you have with your manager before disclosing. If you don't have a great one or you just don't know them that well, build that up before disclosing if possible. Understand how they would look at it, their outlook, their perspective, to get a sense to know where it would stand if you did disclose it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you do decide to disclose, you definitely want to focus on ensuring that your side project or your side work, whatever it is you should do, is not going to impact your main job. Do whatever it takes, whether it's blocking out time, just working on your side hustle after hours, but just make sure that you set up some boundaries so that they don't interfere with each other.
Yeah, and it's okay to keep it to yourself. Just don't break that company policy or risk that conflict of interest for sure.
Yep. And just always remember, it's everyone's ethics system, personal ethics system is set up differently, but it's not about hiding and being maliciously dishonest, but it really is about protecting your interests and staying within the rules of your company, and they can coexist.
I agree.
Yes. All right.
That's where we're at today with Job Fair.
Yes. You know it. All right, y'all. So appreciate y'all tuning in with us today. Make sure that you go check out our website, our socials. We're at the Job Fair on everything, www.thejobfair.com. We want to hear from you. We want to hear suggestions, show topics, special requests. And of course, we welcome any and all job seeker or employer guests who'd like to join us on the show. Shoot us a message on our inbox and we'll be sure to get back to you. Watch out for episode 4.
Episode 4 dropping
coming
next
in
week.
hard and fast. Yes, we're excited about it.
I think we have a guest.
It's going to be a good one. Mum's the word right now, but stay tuned. All right. Make sure you subscribe. Yeah. And that's a wrap, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Right. Take care. Till next time. Bye.
Bye.